Hi, welcome to the Big Bear Homestead. And today, in Season 2 of Predator Control on the Homestead, we're going to be talking about the squash bug. Alright, so today we're going to be talking about the squash bug. Now, let's set a record straight here. Sometimes the squash bug gets confused or misidentified as the stink bug. They are not the same bug. They are different bugs. Okay? Now, and one of the reasons why they do get confused is that the squash bug, when he's being attacked or needs to feel like he needs to be defensive, he will let off a slight odor, but it's nowhere near as potent as the stink bug. So, how do we know if it's a squash bug? Well, this is how you identify if it's a squash bug. The adults, they're somewhat a flat, large bug. They're about 5/8 of an inch long and 1/3 of an inch wide. Okay? They usually have dark gray. They're usually dark gray to brown with alternating brown and orange stripes. Now that's the adults. They'll have brown and alternating stripes on their body. Okay? Now, how do you know when you're flipping over leaves or something? What do the eggs look like? Well, the eggs are oval in shape. Okay, they're about 1/16 of an inch, and they're a yellowish to a bronze in color. Okay, so they're oval, and they're really, really tiny. I mean, 1/16 of an inch. That's like that big. And they're yellowish to a bronzish type of color. Okay? Now, once they come out of the egg, then they go into their nymph stage. Okay? So what does a nymph look like? Well, the nymphs range in size from 1/10 of an inch to 1/2 an inch. Because they're slowly becoming adults. So they're kind of growing like a kid. Okay? They start off green with black heads, and you might be able to see some legs. But they're steadily changing from the green to a light gray and then into the brownish gray as they slowly form into their adult. Okay? So that's how we identify what a squash bug is. Okay? But what's this life cycle of a squash bug? How do we know? I mean, how long do they live? Okay, so now that we know how to identify the squash bug, let's take a few minutes and let's talk about its life cycle. Because this bug, believe it or not, is a warrior. Okay, so we've got to understand its life cycle so that way we can better combat it without having to try to use harsh chemicals. Okay, well, let's start in the beginning. Let's start with the egg. Okay, the eggs are usually laid in clusters of 20, and they're usually laid on the underside of leaves or on the stems. Okay, the eggs will hatch in about 10 days. Okay, now once they hatch, they start their nymph cycle, and we're going to get into that here in a minute. But the nymph cycle, the squash bug doesn't do a complete metamorphosis. So what that means is he doesn't make a cocoon kind of like a caterpillar to a butterfly. He doesn't do that. And he basically is growing in stages, but we'll get to that here in a second. Okay? So our eggs have hatched, and now we're in the nymph stage. Nymphs take about 4 to 6 weeks to mature into adults. Okay? Now, remember when I said that they don't do complete metamorphosis? They do a 5-stage, what is called an instar, which basically means that they are growing a little bit at a time. They're going to fade from their green color into their brownish, yellowish color. The legs are going to get longer. They're going to grow eggs. They're going to grow wings They're not going to grow eggs, but they're going to grow wings, and then they'll eventually grow antenna, and then they're sucking mouth parts, all of that through this stage. Okay, it just doesn't, boom, happen like with the caterpillar and butterfly. That's called a complete metamorphosis. This happens over stages. Now, the nymphs will die when temperatures reach freezing. So keep that in your mind. When the temperatures drop down to around freezing, the nymphs will die. Okay? Now, let's get in. We've got some that made it through, but here's a weird, crazy fact for you. Only one generation usually makes it to adulthood. So when your adults come out from overwintering, and they overwinter in things like where they can get shelter, where they can get cover, and they slip in, they go in there, and they kind of go into a bug hibernation. But they're going to go to places like wood piles, leaf piles, wood chips. If you leave your garden unattended after the season and all those vines are still there, they're going to find nice little cubbies and places to go in there, and they're going to overwinter. And then they're going to come out, and as soon as they come out in the spring, that's mating season. And they'll mate from spring to about midsummer. Okay? Now, this is what I mean. That first generation of eggs will be the one generation that makes it to adulthood. And the reason being is just flat out time. They just don't have enough time in the season before we get to freezing temperatures. Now, that doesn't mean they don't know that. They're going to keep laying eggs, having the nymphs, all that stuff. So when you come out to your squash or pumpkin or anything like that, and you're flipping over leaves, you're going to see all stages. All through the year, you're going to see all the stages. Okay? But it's just that first generation is usually that makes it. Now, folks like me and probably people even further south like Danny and Wanda, they might have 2 or even 3 generations that make it to adulthood, because we rarely get to freezing temperatures. So they have a longer growing season also. Okay? So, with all of that being said, once you've got yours that have made it to adulthood, okay, they're doing their thing, they're tearing up your plants. In the fall, that's when they're going to switch to the fruit of your plant. So that's why it's always best to stay on top of your harvest, because as the temperatures start to drop, they're going to start moving away from your plant to the plant's fruit. Okay? Because they're just like, if you remember how we talked about in the aphid video, and if you haven't seen that one, go back. The squash bug has the sucking mouth part, so they're after the sugary, sappy stuff. And when that stuff is not really flowing in your plant, they're going to jump to the fruit to get it from the fruit. So that's why it's extremely important to stay on top of your harvest. So now we know what a squash bug looks like and what his life cycle is. Let's learn now what we can do about them once we got them. Okay, I know I just ended that last scene where I said, how do we take care of them? Well, I forgot to tell you, how do you know if you got them on your plant just by looking at your plant? Well, here are some signs that you can look on your plant to know if you've got the squash bugs or not, besides flipping the leaf over and taking a look. Now, I want you to, before we get into that, I want you to remember what I said earlier about they have the same mouth parts as the aphid. Okay, so that means they're the sucking kind. So just like with the aphid, some of the things that you need to look for are the yellow spots on your leaves that will eventually turn brown. It'll also cause the leaves to wilt. Young plants, if they get on a young plant, it can kill the young plant. Okay, because the young plant's still growing and it's still sending a lot of sap. And if they're taking away a lot of it from it, it's not going to make it all the way. They're going to kill it. Now, your larger plants are usually more vigorous, and they can tolerate the feeding a little bit more. But you still want to get these guys off of it. So now that we know what to look for, what can we do to manage or get rid of the squash bug? Okay, so do you remember in the beginning when I told you guys that this bug was a warrior? This is why I said that. There is not much that we can do to get rid of the squash bug. Believe it or not, there's not even a chemical out there that you can really spray or dust with that will kill them or get rid of them. They're a very hardcore bug. So, how we prevent them from getting there is a lot of management. Okay? After you're done, after that growing season is done, clean out that garden. Clean it out. Eliminate places where they can overwinter. Okay? Now, if you're like us and you do the Back to Eden garden, you're kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place, because you got a whole garden full of wood chips that they can overwinter in. Okay? But here's a little trick that you can do throughout the growing season. During the daytime, lay out newspaper or planks of wood or something like that. Okay? Then when it gets cooler in the nighttime, the adults and stuff will retreat under that stuff to help keep the warmth. Get out there real early in the morning, flip them over, kill everything. If a nymph makes its way back over there, kill it. Kill them all. Just go full United States Marine Corps on them and just kill everything. Okay? Also, during the growing season, be out there inspecting your plants. Turn leaves over. If you see eggs, if you see the nymphs, and if you see adults, kill them. Crush them, crush the eggs, crush the nymphs, crush the adults. My son and I were sitting here talking, and he said, Dad, one of the things we could do is you got that Ryobi hand vac that you could probably go out there, turn it on, and vacuum them up all in there, and then take them that's in the little vacuum holding area thing, the bag or the bucket or whatever it's got on the end of it, little plastic thing. You can take it, and then you can kill them all at once. So you can be out there instead of trying to run and smash all these bugs, because once the one lets off that odor, it's going to alert the other ones, and they are all going to run for the hills, even the nymphs. That's one of the reasons why they let that odor off. It's basically the white tail of a white-tailed deer. When that white flag comes up, all the other deer in the area know, hey, danger, get out of Dodge. Well, when these guys secrete that odor, all the other ones, including the nymphs, will go, uh-oh, danger, get out of Dodge. And so what you can do is, if you're just vacuuming them up, that should eliminate the possibility of one of them secreting, so then that way you'll be able to collect more at one time. I thought that was a pretty good idea coming from a teenager, but that's just me. Just saying. But the most important thing is just preventative. Get out there and clean up that garden after everything's grown. Do early harvests. Eliminate areas for overwintering. Keep an eye on your plants. Keep your plants healthy. Keep your plants healthy with a good amount of water. Make sure your plants and your soil is healthy. Make sure you got that party going on, so that way you don't have to add commercial fertilizers. Keep top dressing with compost to keep those plants healthy. Because one of the things that, especially with the Back to Eden garden, is that one of the things that he was saying is he didn't have a lot of trouble with pests because the pests were drowning. because when they would puncture the stem or the fruit or the leaf of that plant, they were just getting overwhelmed, and it was basically drowning the bug and killing it. So keep your plants healthy, keep your garden cleaned up, and that should help you keep a squash bug population under control. And you always got to do inspections. So, well, that does it for this episode of Predator Control on the Homestead. I hope you guys found this video informative and helpful. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments, and we'll do our best to answer those questions for you. Thanks for coming by the Big Bear Homestead, and like always, have a nice day.